Welcome back, everybody, to Culz Interviews, our first one of 2025. So, thank you guys for joining us on another new year. We got some returning guests today. Obviously, our main guest right now is Jimy Bleu. You guys should know we had a wonderful conversation about mid last year about Jimi Hendrix and as well as his band. And then, of course, you guys should know Mark Eddy. He's been on quite a few episodes as well. So glad to have you gentlemen back. And from our group, you see Sam and Mr. Cooks himself, Andrew, and myself. So how's everyone doing tonight? Doing pretty good? Staying warm?
I don't think I met Andrew yet, though.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been on. I've been with the group for a while, but I've been absent and a little busy with life for a minute.
Oh, cool. Nice meeting you, man.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, no, Andrew, I sent him the link to some of your stuff so he would see, and he was pretty excited to join. Andrew is from New York as well, so he knows. Yeah.
He knows the madness.
That's why I live in Colorado now.
Oh, wow. Big change. Yeah, I traveled around the world, and I can't wait to get back to New York, but when I'm here, I hate it. It's like New York City, it's just
That's how it is. When you're gone, you miss it, but when you come back, it's like I remember why.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Last time we went, I was so excited to get back. It could have been probably like 10 years. And then it was like day 3 or 4, and I was like, you know what, I'm ready to go. Well, Jimy, since the last time we talked, and I know it's been probably like half a year, how things been going?
Hey, I'm blessed, especially to be able to continue with what I'm doing with actually both of my shows. I do a Hendrix show and I also do an Al Green show. And the reason why I say that is because I'm during the meet and greets especially, I'm meeting a lot of people. And that seems to be my calling, sort of like a quote unquote ministry, to meet people and to talk to different people, because I'm also affected in my own personal transformation from some of these people. They're not just all dumb concert goers here.
Yeah.
Some of these people are very intelligent, and it's great to meet people from around the globe, man, who really have it together mentally,
Yeah, no, I mean, our group can relate. We go to a lot of festivals and stuff, and just to meet people and talk and have those conversations been wonderful and life-changing for us. We talk about it a lot. And I mean, so with Jimi Hendrix, maybe for anyone that doesn't know, how did you get involved in that?
Well, I'm actually from New York City, and actually I'm a Queens boy, born in Brooklyn but raised in Queens, and I was doing okay, little conservative Queens boy until high school. My high school was in the middle of Times Square on West 46th Street in Times Square, Performing Arts High School. And that's where the trouble began. I say that because back then, in the late 60s, it was very filthy. It wasn't cleaned up like it was today. You know what I mean? It was really dirty. So to take a nice clean-cut Queens boy and to put him in the middle of Times Square, literally in the middle of Times Square back then, I'm surprised I'm still alive because I did some stupid things, But anyway, pertaining to your question, man, I was trying to get with this girl in high school in my junior year, and she was a groupie for a lot of the bands that came through. Zeppelin, Yes, all of these bands of Chicago would come through and they would have their groupies, and she was one of the main girls. So she was always partying. So I was trying to get with her. And you know what I mean when I say get with her. So anyway, I figured one day she came to school with this button, this yellow and blue button that said the official Jimi Hendrix fan club, Warner Reprise Records. So I heard about Jimmy, but I was more back then. Actually, I was doing a James Brown tribute. I was James Brown, and it was very popular. I was doing it since middle school, junior high school. So it was very popular. We were traveling around the tri-state area with that. So I was a soul guy, to say the least. So I figured if I joined the fan club, I would get with her, and that's how it all started. And then around that time also, too, we used to go to this apartment a few blocks from the high school. and to get high and things like that. And one time we were sitting in there and we're getting high, and the person whose apartment it was, his uncle came back early, we expected, and caught us, and we were like, okay, it's all over. Come to find out, his uncle was one of the photographers for the Monterey Pop Festival and worked alongside Danny Baker and all of these people. So he took us in, instead of chastising us, he took us in the editing room and showed us raw footage of Monterey Pop. And this is the unedited stuff. And I was looking for Otis Redding because I was a soul guy. And so I'm waiting for Otis Redding to come. I saw Mamas and the Papas, and I saw Country Joe and all these, but I'm waiting for Otis Redding. All of a sudden, I saw Hendrix. And I said to myself, I have never seen anybody, number one, move with an instrument like that, and never seen just the whole shamanistic way he moved. I like to use that word because that's what he looked like to me. Keep in mind, we were high. Some of us were tripping. So to see that, I said to myself, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. And join the fan club. I didn't get with the girl, but I got to hang around Jimy often, and that's how it all started. I hate to make a long story, but that's pretty much what happened. I've been doing this since 1968. This is my 57th year. I hung around Jimy often. I am the last surviving protege of Hendrix. He had 3 proteges, Velvet Cherner, a guy called Vishwa, whose name was James, and myself. And the other 2 are dead and gone. So I believe if I'm dead and gone, there's going to be nobody else carrying on what this guy was doing. And I'm not just talking about musically. Before he died, he came onto a spiritual path, I guess we'll get into later. And that's what I'm carrying on. It's very important. That's when I do my lecture demonstrations, that's what I focus on, is the spirituality of where this guy was going.
Yeah, no, and I've seen obviously the YouTube videos and stuff like that with your performances, and it's amazing, just like how much you channel Hendrix. It's quite amazing. It's like watching him. I'm sure I never obviously got the chance to watch Hendrix in person, but Mark was the one that turned us on. Mark, do you want to discuss a little bit about the performances and stuff like that too?
I think they're great. The 3 times or so I've seen, Kiss the Sky, I feel like, I actually saw Jimi Hendrix play. Really enjoyed it. I got to hang out afterwards and, talk with Eric and Ted, Narissa. The detail of the costumes that Jimy brings with him is really just amazing. I like the Russian army jacket. Is that the one? Is that the one on the cover of People Howling Angels?
Yeah, I believe so. I think that's a later recording, so I'm not really familiar with that cover. But yeah, I believe it's the same one.
I like that one, and you have also you're also friends with Jimy's seamstress. Did she make anything for you, or advise you on how to dress for some of the shows?
I think you're speaking about Colette.
Yes.
No, she didn't advise me. We're friends. She made the actual Woodstock jacket for Jimy, but I'm friends with a lot of people connected with Jimy who are still alive today, including his surviving bandmates. We have all of the blessings from all of these people. They respect what we're doing. And I like to say also, before I say what I'm going to say, I like to say that I paid Mark to say all of that.
No, it's just true.
The check's in the mail, my man. No, but seriously, actually, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing with Kiss the Sky is a product of not just me. The producer of the show, Mike Gotch, I met him in 2016, and he approached me to do a Hendrix show. I've been doing a Hendrix show, like I said, since '68, but I didn't have everything that he had, meaning the costumes, the era equipment, videos in between the costume changes, the actual Joshua Light show for that Joshua White used to use the Fillmore for all of these bands. We license his light show. He's a friend of ours. And
Wow.
so we bring that all together in the Broadway play type show, sort of like maybe you guys would remember Beatlemania back in the day. When you went to Broadway to see Beatlemania, you saw them from beginning to end. And nothing like what we do with Hendrix has ever been done, not even by the guy's family, has ever been done on Jimy. And I think he deserves that. So when I met Mike, he was thinking the same way I did. Matter of fact, he approached me and he said, dude, I got the racing car, but I don't have the driver. That's how we bonded. And it's been since 2016. It's been a lifelong friendship. It's like a wedding. We both have the same mentality when it comes to presenting Jimi Hendrix, not just getting out on stage and playing Jimi Hendrix songs, or you know what I mean, or things like that. It's actually presenting from beginning to end how this guy was. Why was he important? How did he play the guitars different that people today aren't playing? Wait a minute. Listen to what I'm saying. People today, 50 years later, aren't playing the way Jimy played. And that I demonstrate in my lectures. He played a certain way, especially moving his body. He played with his body a lot. I'm speaking about early Hendrix, because once the mess started coming in, the political and his management mess and all of that, he lost focus. So I'm speaking about the early, maybe year and a half when he first hit. He was only around for maybe 4 years. The first year and a half from Monterey Pop on for about a year. That's the Hendrix that I focused on. I'm speaking about the energy. Even though we do all of his periods, we do Woodstock, Band of Gypsies, Cry of Love Tour, the Fillmore years, we do Rainbow Bridge, we do all of that. But I'm saying the most important energy level that I focus on is Monterey Pop, when he had to prove himself to the rest of the world. Europe had already known how great he was, but America, you know, we're always late for everything. so you know what I mean? We just don't get it for a while. And he had to really prove himself at that concert, and he did.
Well, and as somebody that obviously got the chance to meet Jimy, and you bring about his spirit when you're playing, tell us a little bit about who Jimy was as a person and some of his ideas that are so important that we need to help try to share with people today.
Okay, yeah, and a lot of that is on the net. People can Google that. I'm not what I call the Hendrix answer guy, like the Shell answer man. There are guys, man, who could, oh, well, Jimy and blah, 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 and he did this and he wore this and blah, 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 blah. I do that to a certain extent, but like I said, I focus on his music, politics, and spirituality. And why I say politics is because he was very dangerous once he became the top rock performer of his time, the last couple of years of his death. He became very dangerous to the powers that be. I'm not going to mention who those powers that be are, of course, but when you read the actual FBI files, when you read the which I got from Freedom of Information Act, when you read these papers, this guy, yeah, he was very dangerous, man. And one of the reasons why is because he was bringing together not just white people, he was bringing together blacks, Asians, Puerto Rico. I mean, whenever you went to a Hendrix concert, you saw the wide gamut. And back then, it was dangerous. It's still dangerous today. But back then, race mixing, ooh, women in the late 60s, yikes. Yeah. So that, yeah. And like I also said too, or earlier, his spirituality, he was getting into about a year and a half before his death, really started to get his mind together. He was weaning himself off of really hard drugs. When I say hard drugs, I mean like tripping every day, LSD, and things like that. He was casually smoking, but he was smoking pot, but he was weaning himself away and getting more into meditation and things like that, to really get his mind together. He was hanging around certain people who were schooling him in that.
Well, do you want to go a little bit more in depth with some of the spirituality and stuff that was helping him and what he, obviously found so important and helped him progress with that?
Well, when I speak about Hendrix, we have to keep in mind he died before he reached the age of 28. What were we doing at 25, 26, 27? You know what I mean? Where was our minds at? I know I was an idiot. So even though I had a spiritual grandfather who kind of like kept me on the track, but so what this guy accomplished at such a young age, we're not talking about a middle-aged man, we're talking about a young guy. What he accomplished, it's amazing. In 4 years, unheard of. But spiritually, I would say the last year before he died, he was hanging around Timothy Leary. You guys familiar with him?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's considered a nut. But Jimy actually did. You can go on online and you can actually hear this. He did an album with Timothy Leary. He's playing bass on the album. He actually produced it, but he didn't get the credit for it. But Stephen Stills is on there, John Sebastian. They're playing guitars. Jimy's playing bass, and he was hanging around Timothy Leary quite often. He actually did at the Village Gate. He did a benefit for Leary. Now, Timothy Leary and his partner were involved in the Gurdjieff movement, the Gurdjieff Fourth Way movement. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that. I think we talked a little bit about that last time I was here. And so his partner, actually Timothy Leary's partner, really got Jimy involved with that. And also Jimy was involved with the ancient Nile Valley teachings, what people call ancient Egypt. But he was involved with that also before he died. The same people are still around who were involved in that legacy, mainly the people who played with him. Two of his singers, well, one of them died, but one of his singers that are background singers who was with Jimy really is involved in that, and he can tell the story better than I can how Jimy got involved with that. But that's where he was going, man. And he was, like I said, he was very communal thinking, so he was hanging around people at different paths. And I also like to say too, are you familiar with Alice Coltrane?
Mm-hmm.
John Coltrane, the sax player, his wife, Alice Coltrane. She played piano behind John as well. But after John's death, she became a Hindu guru. And she had an ashram up in California, and it went on at least until maybe the early 2000s. She died in I believe the 90s or late 80s and 90s. But her ashram still continued until it had a big fire. And I mentioned her because she reached out after John's death. She reached out to a lot of rock musicians to collaborate with them. And one of the first ones she reached out to was Hendrix. She kept getting the runaround. She got the number from Miles Davis because Jimy and Miles were tight. And she kept getting runaround from Jimy's management. And so she reached out to Carlos Santana. And come to find out, she did an album with Carlos Santana. And it affected Carlos's mentality so much that the guy changed his name to a Hindu name. He started calling himself David. And you can, like I said, you can go online and hear that album. You hear it on YouTube. It's got some of the top jazz musicians. Pharoah Sanders is on that album. But like I said, Alice Coltrane and Carlos Santana, that's what she wanted to do, was reach out to rock musicians. She felt that it was very important what rock musicians were doing back then, whereas a lot of jazz musicians were like, oh, that's rock, I'm not into that. You know what I mean? She was one of the few who were like, there's something important here, let me get along with that. So that's that's what Jimy said was that, man, spiritually.
Jimy talking from the stage of Woodstock you don't even know what the band's name was, but whatever whatever they were calling themselves, every name, pretty much had some kind of church kind of connotation. That seems, at that moment, August of '69, it just seems like there was something, forming in and around Jimy by that time. Where do you think it was going?
I think you're speaking about the electric church movement.
Yeah.
That he was trying to facilitate, which wasn't his idea, was from his drummer Buddy Miles, had the idea initially. Jimy adopted it. And that was to bring that Holy Ghost feeling that you feel inside a church, to bring that to the rock crowd, the rock venue. Matter of fact, there's a documentary about the Atlanta Pop Festival called Electric Church. If you watch that documentary, 95% of the documentary is about Jimy talking about spirituality and race mixing. And this was a festival he did just before he died. So you get an idea where he was going. And we have to be careful when we quote Jimy. Often I get, oh, Jimy said blah, 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 blah. Like, yeah, but what was he on when he said it? You know what I mean? You got to be really careful, man. That's why when I do my lecture demonstrations, I try to be objective and impartial. I'm not a Hendrix freak. I respect what he was doing, and I adopted his spirituality, especially even more than his music, but his spirituality. But I am totally objective to what he did. There was a lot of things he did that were like negative to me, that I would never even think of doing. And so I try to be careful with that. But yeah, that's what you were talking about, Mark, is that whole electric church thing. The band was he was calling the band the Gypsy Sun, Moons, and Rainbows back then. And he was trying to get that whole, like I said earlier, of bringing that whole communal mentality of just bringing different musicians together. And he tried it on stage. I mean, the Band of Gypsies and maybe one other project he tried, and he didn't have time to really develop. So they're like mainly jam session thingies. Woodstock was one big jam session to me. It's very loose. So yeah, you have to really be careful, but you can at least get an idea of what he was trying to do had he had more time on the planet to develop his ideas.
Well, and how do you see like his spirituality like switching perhaps how he did his music? Like, do you see a lot more influences towards the end from the spirituality than in the beginning?
Oh, most definitely. In the beginning, he was just he was what every musician, including myself, tries to do when you're coming up is to get backing, get somebody behind you. So once he got that, it was like, oh man, I'm partying now. Oh man, I can, So once he got that out the way, and then like I said, the heaviness of the drama around him, his management, which was crooked, a lot of other, like I said, the powers that be from the government, everything was coming down. Then we saw a different Jimi Hendrix, and him doing things to try to cope with that. And like I said, he was 25, 26. So yeah, he was trying to do things to really cope with that. But listen, he still accomplished a lot, and he left a legacy that transcends time to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned Hendrix to anybody. I mean, I think anyone knows the name. It's one of those few artists that I think you can mention anywhere probably you go and they'll know. That's quite the legacy. And like you said, for a guy that was 27, not 28, yeah, that's amazing to think about just how long he had done it for. Well, tell us too about your band, for people listening, because it's an experience. It's not just, go watch a tribute band. You actually do an experience. There's a lot of attention to detail, from clothing to music. I mean, you're getting into it. Tell us a little bit about the show.
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, it's a Broadway play type production, 2 hours, sometimes 2.5 hours. Recently in August, we was able to bring on stage three of his surviving band members to join us on stage, which is something that hasn't been accomplished in a long time. I was the Jimy. So for them to get behind me doing that, we must have really big respect for each other to pull that off. And they're really close friends. All three of these guys are really close friends. They respect what I'm doing with the legacy, so they're behind it 100%. Uh, that's yeah, like I said, we cover everything from even before he made it in America, when Jimy was big in England. We cover his England years, then we go to Monterey Pop. We go to Jimy's Fillmore years, even before the Band of Gypsy, when he was at the Fillmore a lot. Then we come up to Woodstock, Band of Gypsies, and we end the show usually with the Cry of Love tour, his final tour before he died, which he had black bass player and Mitch Mitchell, the white drummer. So, and he was trying to include more musicians. Like he wanted Stevie Winwood to play with him. He loved Stevie, the fact that Stevie could play great guitar and great keyboards. So he was really looking for that. He was hanging around with Miles Davis. They were jamming often. And so he was trying to get something together with that. As a matter of fact, you can actually Google the telegram that he wrote to Paul McCartney, because John Lennon and Paul McCartney were Jimmy's best friends. From the time Jimy went to England, they were totally behind him in every way. So he wrote a telegram towards the end of his life to Paul, and I'm paraphrasing, but the telegram is, "Hey, I got a band with Miles Davis and Tony Williams on drums. We'd like you to come and play bass." And Paul was on vacation, so one of his go-betweens wrote Jimy back and said, "Paul's not available now," or something like that. So yeah, you can get an idea where he was trying to go and what he was trying to do musically. There's an album that Miles Davis did called Bitches Brew. And that album is a product of when Miles, I should say the album before that, but Bitches Brew really solidified it. When Miles was hanging around rock musicians like Sly Stone and Hendrix. Keep in mind, they were running buddies. They were partying together for a while. So that album reflects that, Bitches Brew. And Jimi Hendrix was supposed to be on that album. Sly Stone was supposed to be on that album. I don't know what happened with the Sly thing, but I know what happened with Jimy because Miles writes about it in his bio. Miles accused Jimy of messing with his wife, Betty Davis, his young model wife, who introduced Miles to Jimy. And Betty Davis, of course, denies it. But her and Jimy were pretty close. Let me just leave it at that. But so Miles, I guess, he got mad and he put John McLaughlin on the album instead. But it's still a landmark album. But I always, at my lectures, I always ask my audience, close your eyes and just picture Jimi Hendrix, Miles Davis, and Sly Stone on an album. Yikes. I mean, yikes. So, and also pertaining to what you guys do, Keegan, Jimy was the sci-fi ambassador. There is just no doubt this guy came from another planet. We can't picture it, like detail it down, but there's obviously he wasn't from this planet. There was something otherworldly going on with this guy from his whole approach to the guitar from the Monterey Pop Festival. I always ask people, watch that festival again in light of what I've been saying, just to see how different he is from anybody today. Look, we have the greatest guitar players today. Some of my heroes, Steve Vai, Satriani. I got on the list. These guys are wizards. They don't play guitar like Jimi Hendrix did. When you watch them, they're not approaching the guitar like that. They're technically brilliant, but Jimy was something else with like I said, the body movement, his voice, the way he was able to sing and talk, that sing-talk style that he developed, and then put that all together in a package of brilliant playing the songs, especially his ballads. Oh my God. Angel came down from heaven yesterday, stayed with me just long enough to rescue me. Who writes stuff like that? You know, it's like, come on, man. Uh, this guy was like, I always tell people to listen to his ballads. We all know he was the loud rocket. Listen to those ballads. Castles Made of Sand. He was a poet. You know what I mean? So he put that into lyrics, and it was brilliant.
Yeah, like Spanish Castle Magic.
Yeah, that's more of a rocker, sure.
Yeah, riding on the dragonfly.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would say if anybody was more related to sci-fi, would have to be Jimi Hendrix back then. And we can't explain it. We just don't know, how that happened, because like I said, after he died, like nobody else stepped into that thing.
Well, speaking of sci-fi, I mean, UFOs were kind of big about that time. There was that big kind of UFO thing. What do you think Jimmy would have thought about the UFOs today? Maybe because it was different times back then. Everyone, it was kind of like a UFO panic. Obviously, Cold War stuff going on, but today it's a little bit more open. We'll say. Do you think it would have been down Jimmy's line or not?
Oh, well, like I said, he was the poster boy for the whole sci-fi movement. He would have welcomed it. He writes about it in some of the songs. At the end of Castles Made of Sand, he talks about what's the third verse? There was a young girl whose heart was a found because she was crippled for life. She couldn't even speak a sound. So she wished and prayed that she could stop living. So she decided to die. Now that should have ended right there, right? Then she drew a wheelchair to the edge of the shore, and to her legs she smiled, "You won't hurt me no more." But then a sight she seen made her jump up and say, "Look, a golden winged ship is passing my way." That's 1968. That says it all. Plus, on that same album, he begins the album with a supposed alien talking about how, an interview with an alien. And then he gets into a song called Up From the Skies, where he talks about being away, then coming back and saying, I heard this and I heard that, blah, 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 blah. So from right there out the gate, he's speaking about sci-fi. You know what I mean? That's early Jimmy when he was on fire. So it leaves no doubt where he was going. I mean, I checked out you guys' Roswell interview. That's the thing that really fired me up. And then I started taping some of them so I can listen to them on my drives, some of the shows that you did. But that one was the first one that I was like, it was very interesting. That's all Hendrix, Keegan. I'm telling you, that's all where Hendrix's head was at. He was, anybody who was around Hendrix would tell you, he was walking around with sci-fi things, books and stuff like that. So he was able to actually incorporate that in his lyrics, sure.
Yeah, we got a talk with Donald Schmidt coming up. It's processed, so I think it goes live in a couple weeks. But Roswell happened in 1947, so I'm sure Jimmy would have heard about it, and would be interesting to get his thoughts, because I mean, obviously there's also the Washington D.C. one, as far as like the UFOs over the Capitol. So I'm sure it'd be fun to sit down and talk to him about that kind of stuff. Well, we kind of talked about like UFOs. Tell us maybe some of like the spiritual verses, like what spiritual verses stand out to you the most, because there's gonna be a lot of them, but maybe if you could pick one or two where you're like, okay, I can see like the Hindu peeking out of that track.
Well, keep in mind, like I said, before he died, he was involved with the paths I mentioned. But even before he got into that, to answer your question more clearly, some of the early interviews say it better than I can. This guy was interviewed in 1967, maybe early 1968, and he was telling the interviewers, I want to awaken sleeping people because there's so many sleeping people. We play loud to affect the minds of sleeping people. He was talking about that when he first, came out. So I mean, obviously his mind was going to a more spiritual thing, in which he eventually found. I don't know where you guys are at spiritually, but there seems you're on something. And my point is, something led you to that. You know what I mean? I call it inside a person a magnetic center, but there are different names. But something drew you to where you're at now. And when you hear Jimy speak like that, I want to awaken sleeping people, because there's so many sleeping people. You know that he's on his way to somewhere. And like I said, before he died, he found it. He found where, oh, okay, this is where I need to go, at least till the next part of my journey.
God, we got to get you to play at the Roswell UFO Festival. That would just be so cool. We go every year, but yeah, that would be so cool, because they always have like a big headliner with lasers and stuff. I mean, that would be awesome. I mean, that would be perfect. We've been talking about UFOs and Jimi Hendrix. I mean, what better place to do it at?
It fits.
Yeah.
What with working with Billy, Juma, and Jerry, what have you learned that maybe most people don't know about Jimi Hendrix with our first 3 CDs that they may have? What are some of the backstories that really make Jimy such an enigmatic person?
Oh, there's so many, Mark. You and I have spoken about some of them. I can't really bring anything up mentally now. It's just so much. I learned to connect the dots more speaking to these guys. They filled in a lot of different pieces. When I first joined Jimy's fan club, my grandfather was very spiritual, and he recognized that I was going in the wrong direction, hanging in Times Square. You know what I mean? After school. And he kind of like steered me on the right path. And he kind of told me, you're around some important people, you're around some important events, take notes, which is what I did. I used to walk around with a little thing in my back pocket, notepad, and I take notes. And matter of fact, it took me almost 2 decades to digitize those notes. And I'm glad I did. That's because my memory, of course, would not be able to really pick up a lot of what went down back then. I was at Woodstock, things like that. My memory but I was able to look at the notes and say, okay. So when I spoke to these people, various people I met associated with Jimy, I was able to connect the dots. I was like, oh, okay. For instance, Mark, you mentioned Colette, and one of Jimy's producers, Alan Douglas's wife, Stella, used to have a clothing shop that was a block and a half, 2 blocks away from the Fillmore East. So all of the rock stars used to go to the clothing shop and hang out there and get clothes made and things like that. I mean, everybody from Johnny Winter, Miles Davis, Cher. She used to make clothes for Cher back then. I mean, so they used to go there and hang out. Well, when I was in the fan club, me and a couple of other members, young kid, keep with mine, we was 15 or 16. We used to go to the shop because she didn't have a dressing room in the shop. So when females would come in the shop and say, oh, I like that. Oh, wow, I like that. They would try stuff on. They would take off their shirt. So I would see breasts. they would take the dress off, wearing nothing but panties. And so to young 15, 16-year-old guys, we were like, but Colette didn't kick us out. It's just like, get out of here. So we used to hang there. So at first, when I ran into her, I used to have an FM radio show for 12 years, and I interviewed everybody who's important to Jimy, just about is still alive. So when I interviewed her, she didn't really, I don't really remember you until I mentioned that. And we had a belly laugh, and she's like, oh, wow, because she remembers us kids coming in there and going, oh my God, yeah. So it's little things like that, that I have memories with Jimy, backstage with him often. He showed me a few things that I still incorporate with Kiss the Sky. So yeah, there was a lot going on, man. But as I said earlier, I'm just glad I took notes.
Yeah, it's something that's important is to document it while you can.
Mhm.
You know, that's something, we try to do when we're on our trips is just obviously now it's a little easier with cameras and stuff and video. We can just video it. But yeah, it's something I've always tried to do is just, something important happened or something that I want to remember. I try to write it down
Yeah, yeah.
just so in the future I'm like, hopefully I can remember it.
Like what was your original impression?
Original impression of what?
Jotting down notes about what you just saw. How did it affect you? What did you think right after it happened? I do that with um, my notebooks as well.
It sort of makes you think, and
Hmm.
because you're not aware of that mental impression it makes on you while you in that moment, but as you look back on it, you're like, oh wow, okay. And then you have to really have discipline with yourself not to go and correct it and make it better. You have to be objective with it. Okay, that's what happened. Wow, that's kind of messed up, dude. You know what I mean? And not try to make it prettier or whatever, and just log it and move on, as I like to
Yeah.
say. That was very hard for me in the beginning. And my grandfather was very stern with me with that. He, thank goodness, because I would have said, nah, changed it up here and there. Oh yeah, oh yeah, sure, I'm Jimmy's brother. I would have said something stupid. I was young and dumb. I would have said something. He was like, look, just, you know, and back then also too, maybe about a year before he died, Jimy wasn't my favorite guitar player, man. My mentality was trying to be like the English rock guitar players. I really Clapton, Beck, even Johnny Winter. I often saw Johnny Winter and Beck jam lots in person. So these were my guys, man. Terry Kath from Chicago. These were the cats I dug. Jimi Hendrix, he was black. He wasn't rock. This is where my this my head was at sometimes. So about a year before he died, or so, even less, I started to wow. Okay, I started to see where this guy was going. Wow. Okay, I started to really get it. But yeah, for a long time, man, hey man, how stupid it got is back on the subway. I used to go back and forth on the subway with my friend, and basically I used to try to talk English to him loud so people can hear me, didn't think I was English. That's how stupid I was. You know what I'm saying? this, this is how stupid I was. So basically, yeah, man, you grow out of those things, man. But it makes us who we are, right?
Yeah,
It,
no, you got to live those experiences to become who you're going to become.
Yeah.
the Electric Ladyland studio still in operation? Where's it located?
Yes, that studio came about. Jimy and his management bought this club called the Generation Club and decided, hey man, let's might as well build a studio. So he was the first rocker to have his own studio. Now Todd Rundgren and other people had studios, but it wasn't pretty much their own. This was his studio, and it was located on West 8th Street in the Village. And basically, he was there maybe while it was still being built. He was able to record out of maybe one of the rooms for about, what is it, 8 months or so, maybe less, before he died. And the reason why I'm bringing this story up is because while he was recording there was a little section in the back where he used to sleep. And, he would go and record and then go to sleep. Well, today, that little section has been bought by a multimillionaire and turned into a fabulous villa, whatever. I don't even know what to call it. It's an amazing place. And he happens to be one of our backers for Kiss the Sky. He's a Hendrix freak. And he happens to, yeah, he endorses us and everything, backs us. And pretty much he owns that space. And when we first met him, we played the Cafe Wah where Jimy got his start. One of the clubs he got his start here in New York City. We played the Cafe Wah, and that's how we met him. And afterwards, he threw a party for us at that spot behind Electric Ladyland with celebrities and things like that. So we was able to really bond with him at that party. But yeah, it's still going, man. It's still going strong. A lot of famous people have recorded there, and they're still recording there, sure.
A little off topic, but it's right behind you. It looks like it has like wings. What is that? It looks really cool.
What's that?
It's right behind you. It's like a gold like figure. It looks like it has wings right behind you.
Oh, behind me?
Yeah.
That's I hate to use a quote unquote goddess that you would know as Isis. The real name is Set Ast, and from ancient Egypt.
Oh, it looks really cool.
Yeah, like I said, Jimy was involved in that those teachings. Matter of fact, he turned his two background singers who I mentioned earlier. He turned them on to the teachings. One of them still is alive. Tahaka Alim is his name, and he tells the story how Jimy turned them on to him and his twin brother on to the teachings. And like I said, he was also involved with the Gurdjieff movement, which a lot of people don't give him credit for. But listen, back then, this is what I didn't get to bring out the last time I was on the show. Back then, almost every musician you can name, famous musician, was involved in something spiritual. Hindu, Buddhism, Taoism, something. We can go from the Grateful Dead. We can go to Yes.
Listen
Beatles. To the Yes album, the Beatles, of course, with Rajneesh. It's just about everybody important was involved in some sort of spiritual path. So it's not hard to imagine Hendrix. And when I bring this up in lectures, I say, "Oh, get out of here! He would just get high and he would just wing it." This is what people's mentality was with this guy. But no, he was involved in something heavy too. But he died, and that's just the way life is. So it's not hard to imagine. But reason why that's important with what I just said is that affected the spirituality movement of today. Those young rockers expect it, but nobody talks about that when they speak about spirituality today. But that's why it was very dangerous to the government back then, because you had young kids becoming like, quote unquote enlightened. That's a dangerous idea. But it's responsible for where we are today in the spirituality movement. Especially in the late 50s and the 60s back then, you had spiritual leaders from all over the world set up centers specifically in New York City. Sometimes some in San Francisco, some in California, but mainly in New York City. You had spiritual leaders from all over, had to have a center in New York City. That's very important because, like I said, it affected what's going on today.
Yeah, I mean, spirituality's been on, especially at that time. I know, like the Beatles, the Sgt. Pepper's Club Band, they have Aleister Crowley on as one of the figureheads.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's definitely something throughout, and it's very interesting to see how it has shaped music. And obviously, that generation of musicians inspired the later generations, and so on and so forth. And maybe a lot of them don't know why they're playing it now, like Jimy did. Yeah. They're just kind of imitating what he did and not really knowing the deeper meaning,
Well, that's fine too, because it could lead them later on to, to more important things and finding out who they are. Jimy led me to find out who I am. So yeah, so like you said, these young kids doing it, hopefully something will kick in later in their life to lead them on too.
Well, when you're playing, do you have a favorite song that you really get into the most, or is it just a couple? I mean, how does that work for you?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot. It's really a couple, but my most important song I felt that he did was Voodoo Child's Slight Return, which was really a jam session. They did a song for a TV show or something, and the guy said, "Hey, can you do one more?" So Jimy just kicked that out. Happens to be his most mystical, profound song ever. That's that's especially the way it was mixed, even though he hated the mastering and mixing of the song personally, but the way it just cuts through your soul, that's mysticism, and I would say that's my most important song when I do that. And the thing is, I always try to keep present Jimy as the mystical shaman that he was, more ceremonial. When you look at the Monterey Pop footage, you'll see somebody moving and playing the guitar differently and things like that. But so it's like he's doing a ceremony, especially before he sets the guitar on fire. The way he's getting the sounds, the way he takes the guitar and, does all of these things with the guitar. That's ceremonial. That's what I call rock ceremonial. And that's why I say there's nobody doing that today with the guitar. And actually, the guitar is American as apple pie. You know what I mean? Sure.
Jimy, what's your website, or hopefully you'll be playing more gigs soon. Can you tell us, like, where people can learn more about Kiss the Sky and everything else you do?
Well, the main website, kisstheskytribute.com. It's kisstheskytribute.com. My information, where you can get everything all in one thing, is the link tree. Our link tree is Jimy Bleu, and that's Jimy, it's one M. Bleu is spelled Bleu. So if you go to Linktree, basically you can search me on Linktree/Jimy Bleu. You can search me on that. It has all of my websites on there. But kisstheskytribute.com, when you open that up, you'll immediately see what I've been saying for this past hour.
Yeah, and do you have any upcoming shows or any big concerts that are going to be happening here shortly?
Well, actually, January and February, we got a lot of private events, private shows that have been booked. A couple of them were booked years in advance. So it won't be until about March where we'll be more accessible to the public. But right now, we're doing a lot of private show. We just came back from Oklahoma, things like that. So we're really traveling around a lot doing getting these private shows out the way. But we'll be back in town soon, and just check kisstheskytribute.com for the tour dates, and you'll be able to get an idea of where we'll be at.
And who's in the band?
Well, like I said, we do Jimy's different periods. So we'll do the Experience, where we have the Mitch Mitchell and Noel Redding guys. We do the Band of Gypsies, where we have the Billy Cox and Buddy Miles guys. And we also do Woodstock, where we have his 6-piece band. So it's different guys depending on the shows that we're doing.
You said Hendrix was a sci-fi guy. Are you a sci-fi guy too, Jimy?
Oh yeah, definitely, man. Ursula Le Guin to me. that's my girl, man. The Left Hand of Darkness, yikes, that set me on my path. What set you on your path? I meant to ask you that before, Keegan. What set you down this road?
Down the paranormal road? Me and my brother, I guess our family grew up in like a house with a lot of experiences. Pretty much everyone that went into the house, we've actually been in the midst of writing a book, so I'll have to send it to you once we get it. But yeah, we just had so many experiences, and by the time we move out, it's about the time that like Taps and stuff started getting on TV. And we're like, I wonder if we can do that. So we kind of just saw that and wondered if we could do that. And Sam came on because I've known him since 7th grade, I think. And yeah, he was interested as well. So, we bonded. And then Cooks I've known for probably 10 years almost at this point as well. And, he has, Sam's the UFO guy. Cooks, his great uncle actually brought Wicca to America, so he has kind of that spiritualism that way too. And then me with the ghosts and stuff. So, and then we do a lot of other stuff, history, and I just call our channel History. We do different facets of history, paranormal history, prehistoric history. We try to do as much as we can,
And the history movement is really it's really grown over the past few years with the recent finds all over the planet. It's really exciting now, is my point.
it's getting a little bit better of a spotlight for so many years. There's so many books that I've read, and I say it so many times. Sam's witnessed me struggling through some of them, but they're just written like textbooks, you know?
Yeah,
They
yeah,
don't really have heart or soul. And I'm like, well, no wonder people don't know any of this stuff. They don't want to. It's hard enough for me, and I love reading. So if I love reading and I can barely make. So it's been good to see some like just more like, I don't know. I've read a lot more history books as of late where it's almost like or it's like a fiction book almost. Like it's just that well written that it just keeps you entertained the whole time, but it's truth. And that's what I just find interesting.
yeah. Same here, man. Like I said, it's just exploded over the years with the recent fines. It's no excuse for people to be ignorant no more, especially with YouTube, where you can go and actually see the videos of these scholars and these professors and historians. So there's a lot going on, man. It's cool you guys are into that, man.
Yeah, no, we just try to do as much as we can, you know. Sometimes it's hard, you know, with COVID was a big one. You couldn't really go nowhere, obviously, and it made us kind of change what we were doing. So maybe that's a good thing. You know, we've gone down a little bit different path, but yeah, there's so many fascinating finds. Do you watch any like paranormal history things on TV?
Yeah, I started to watch the series show until it got really crazy, uh, but basically, yeah, man, something exciting comes on. I'm the first one there, or I'll, record it to watch it after a gig or something, man. I find it very interesting, and once you get past this, you have to be very discerning with that. And that's the thing I've learned. You have to be very discerning and pick out, okay, this is TV here. You know what I mean? They want ratings, but yeah, I watch it, man. Sure.
I'm big into like Expedition Unknown though, and just seeing
Yeah.
all the ancient discoveries, and it's really cool because it's like, what was going on like 10,000 years ago? You know, it seems like it's much more advanced than I even remember as a kid, like learning about civilizations and stuff like that.
Oh man, you guys need to really get on some of these guests, man, like Christopher Dunn, Robert Bovall, Graham Hancock. Yeah, try to get some of these guests on your show. They could really enlighten you with what you just mentioned, man. Wow.
And they do have new books out too.
Yeah, but a lot of people, I find a lot of young people. I have students, musical students, right, and a lot of them don't read. They don't pick up books like we old people used to do, right? They go right to YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. That's how they get their information. If it's not on there, it ain't true to some of them. So that's why I like YouTube, because it's there. You can give them a link, and they're like, "Oh, okay." That kind of thing. You give them a book, they're like, "Please, I ain't got time to read no book." I'm just going by my experience. Maybe your experience is different,
No, I mean, with our channel, I can tell you our most popular series is Famous Graves. Like, we'll just go, it's a little YouTube short. And so many people really appreciate it because they're like, hey, I'd never make it there. So thank you for letting me see it. So, I mean, that is very true. People use, the YouTube and stuff. It's weird because I'm still that generation that's old enough to remember before the internet was big. You had to plug it in. You couldn't call no one at the same time. Like, I remember that. It's weird for like my daughter's age and stuff where they're just like and going around and like so good at it. I'm like, geez.
Soon it's gonna be, what's a book, Daddy? Yeah, no, I know what you mean, man. I had the first when internet first started, AOL used to have the chat rooms. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I had a spiritual chat room that was very popular. They sponsored a daily, really overnight, and it became very popular. And I met a lot of people who I'm still friends with today from that spiritual chat room.
Yeah, it's something we're working on getting our Discord up. So it's kind of like the spiritual successor, I guess, to chat rooms and stuff. But we're trying to get that up. Our buddy Grayson's working on kind of building ours, but then that way we can put topics and have more discussion. Because I love talking to people and just getting different aspects of their lives and what they think and perspectives. Because everyone looks at things different. That's what I love to hear.
Yeah, exactly. especially when you think that you pretty much know just about, okay, I know about, and then you speak to somebody who's working in a rice field and tells you something like, what? How does he know? You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I know what you mean.
Now we'll have to have you back on again, Jimy. It's always a pleasure talking with you. Maybe we can pick a movie and just talk about a movie or something, and that's always fun. And Mark, of course, we'll have to have you back on. It's always fun talking with
Oh,
you.
just let me know. I'm always glad to talk with you guys and keep developing these shows. I think tonight was just a lot of fun. I really enjoy what Jimy and Kiss the Sky do.
Yeah, cool, man. It's great being with you guys again. And Keegan, I really appreciate it, man. You're one of the few people who even gravitate towards this topic. A lot of people are not interested in what Jimy was doing other than playing guitar.
Mhm.
When you start saying that this guy was deep, he was into spirituality and stuff, look at the time, I gotta go. You know what I mean? Or they don't answer your emails. So for you to pick up on this, you and Sam, man, I really appreciate you guys having me back, man.
Hey, always happy to have you on. Like, we just love talking people. Whenever we cover someone that's historical, obviously, we just want to cover all aspects, and so we love hearing everything about a person, And so Jimy's complex. He's not just a musician; he's a human being, and we love hearing everything you have to tell us about him.
You got a fuller picture of who the man was.
True. Yeah, so much. A lot of these people, especially when they die young, and we covered a lot with like James Dean or Billy the Kid, obviously.
I love that. I love what y'all did.
But they so often just become like legends, and so much of it is like not true, and they almost become one-dimensional. And so it's really cool to try to paint them back into who they actually were, and make them a three-dimensional person again with it's more interesting, I think. I don't know. Some people like the legend. I'm like, I like the person. It's more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Always welcome. You let us know when you got stuff you want to talk about. We'll put you on like anytime.
Jimy, thanks for turning me on to Gurdjieff, because I didn't know about Gurdjieff before we last talked, and I've been looking at some of the videos online. Obviously, it's not his actual teachings, but like people that have studied it more. It's been pretty fascinating. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh man, it's great to hear you say that, man. You're on a journey, because even if you don't gravitate to his path, now you're on to something really deep, man. It's going to lead you to something really heavy.
Absolutely. Like it's a lot.
Yeah,
there's a lot that they talk about.
It's a lot, but it changes you, man, when you realize that you're not really who you thought you were, but you do have possibilities to be something much better. But it's a possibility. It's not a given, which most people think. So It's great, man. Great to hear you say that, Sam. I'm glad you told me that, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again.
Oh, and speaking of books, you talked last time about Black Legacy, a Dream Deferred, and that's one that I picked up. So I'll be doing a review of it this year. So thank you for speaking of that one as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You need to have him on, because he's a teacher. Okay. So he documents this. We have people talk about that topic, but they don't really have the research and documentation. He documents everything he's talking about. So very interesting guy to have on.
Yeah, we'll have to look into that. Thank you again, Jimy and Mark, for taking time out of your nights to join us and have a fun conversation. Like I said, we'll have to have you both back on here this year.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thank you, man. And nice meeting you, Angel. And Mark, I'll be in touch with you, man.
Yep. We'll keep talking.
Once again, we want to extend a big thank you to both Jimy, Bleu, as well as Mark, Eddy, for joining us on this wonderful episode of Culz Interviews. Now make sure to go keep up with both of them, be it Jimy, Bleu, and the Kiss the Sky band. If you haven't at least seen the performances on YouTube, make sure to go over to Jimy's website, because who knows, Jimy and Kiss the Sky might be coming to a city near you. Also, make sure to keep up with Mark Eddy. He is in the midst of writing a book, and I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. So stay tuned for that. But until next time, guys, for more Culz interviews, click that link to your left. For more about us here at Culz Paranormal, click that link to your right. And don't forget to hit that like and give us a subscribe. And let us know, what was your favorite part of this interview? And have you seen Jimy live in concert? Tell us in the comments below.